I'm done, Chidi. I'm completely deleting my social media profiles tonight. If I see one more DM asking for urgent 2K or a girl asking for an iPhone 16 before she even knows my last name, David, calm down, Chief. Easy for you to say. That is the price of being the CEO of a tech empire at 28. Enjoy your money. You want a girl to love you for your empty pockets? Yes, exactly that. I want someone who sees me. Not the Mercedes G-Wagon, not the trips to Dubai. I want to know if a woman can sit with me in a local buka and eat amala without complaining about her nails. Wait. You are serious? David, you are a soft boy. You cannot survive 1 week pretending to be poor in Lagos. Where will you even go? I've already rented a small room in Yaba. A Face Me, I Face You apartment. I bought a second-hand Danfo bus. I'm going to drive it. You are mad! A whole David Olumai driving Danfo? What if you meet someone from your past? What if a girl treats you like absolute garbage because you look broke?
Chidi, relax. It'll be fine.
That's the whole point, Chidi. That is exactly how I will find her. The one who stays when there is nothing. I leave tomorrow at dawn.
May Nigeria not happen to you, my friend. This suspense is already killing me. Let's see how long you last.
Welcome to Folktales by Lami, where every story carries pain, drama, love, karma, deep life lessons, and stories that keep you speechless to the end. Please like and subscribe.
The transition was brutal. David woke up not to the sound of an automated espresso machine, but to the loud, aggressive crowing of a neighbor's rooster. The air in his tiny Yaba room smelled of stale rain and fried fish. He looked at his reflection in a small, cracked mirror. He wore a faded yellow t-shirt and slippers that felt too thin. His heart hammered against his ribs. For the first time in his life, he felt completely invisible. Stepping out onto the muddy street, he saw the real Lagos. People were rushing, shouting, and pushing to enter yellow buses. He felt like an imposter, but he also felt strangely alive. The journey had officially begun. Learning to drive the yellow Danfo bus was a nightmare. The steering wheel was stiff and greasy, and the brakes required his entire body weight to press down. David's conductor, a loud teenager named Tunde, kept screaming at him to move faster. "Ogre driver, enter the express. You day drive like structural engineer," Tunde yelled, clapping his hands in frustration. David's hands sweated against the wheel as he navigated the chaotic Lagos traffic. Passers-by shouted insults at him. A traffic warden glared at him, waiting for the slightest mistake to demand a bribe. By noon, his shoulders ached terribly. He wondered if Chidi was right. Maybe this grand experiment was a massive mistake. After 2 weeks of driving, David decided to try his luck at romance. He met Cynthia, a fashionable lady who frequented a boutique near his bus stop. One evening, as she waited for a ride, David gathered his courage, adjusted his faded shirt, and walked up to her with a warm smile. "Good evening, beautiful. Can I buy you a cold drink?" Cynthia looked him up and down, her eyes stopping at his dusty slippers. She hissed loudly, snapping her fingers. "God forbid. A common Danfo driver. Please move away before you stain my clothes with your motor oil. Go and find your class, my friend." The harsh words stung David's pride deeply. Determined not to give up, David tried again a week later with Blessing, a hairstylist at the local market. They had spoken briefly a few times, and she seemed friendly. When David finally asked if he could take her out for a simple dinner, Blessing laughed right in his face. "David, you are a nice guy, but nice cannot pay bills or buy bone-straight hair," she said, shaking her head. "I cannot suffer with a man who is still struggling to buy fuel for a yellow bus. Look for someone else who wants to eat block rosy." David smiled through the pain, realizing how deeply people judged a man by his pockets. The third rejection was the heaviest. A lady named Sharon actually agreed to talk to him for a few days. But the moment she saw him counting dirty 500 naira notes to pay a roadside food vendor, her expression changed to disgust. "Is this the kind of life we are going to live?" Sharon asked, crossing her arms angrily. "I am too beautiful to be entering Danfo. If you cannot afford a proper restaurant in Lekki, don't ever call my phone again." She walked away, leaving David standing alone in the dust. He began to fear that true, unselfish love did not exist in the city. It happened during the evening rush hour at a crowded bus stop near the market. Rain was pouring heavily, turning the roads into rivers of brown mud. People were fighting savagely to get onto David's bus. In the middle of the chaos, David saw her. She wasn't fighting or pushing. She was helping an elderly woman who had dropped her basket of tomatoes. She ignored the rain soaking her simple green dress as she gathered the crushed fruit. David felt a strange tug in his chest. Her face was calm amidst the madness, like a bright light in a dark room. He leaned out of his window, blocking off another aggressive passenger. "Enter, sister," he called out. She climbed into the front seat beside him, breathing heavily. Her skin was the color of dark honey, and water droplets clung to her eyelashes. She looked tired, but when she turned to thank David, her smile lit up the dark, stuffy interior of the bus. "Thank you, driver," she said softly. "Lagos people can be so heartless when it rains." David forgot to shift the gear for a second. "I'm David," he said, his voice sounding deeper than usual. She wiped her face with a small handkerchief. "I'm Ife. Nice to meet you, David." For the rest of the trip, David drove with extreme care, ignoring Tunde's angry complaint. David began looking for Ife every single day at that exact bus stop. 2 weeks later, luck smiled on him. She boarded his bus again on a quiet afternoon. When they reached the final stop, David gathered his courage. "Ife, please, can I buy you roasted plantain and groundnut?" he asked, his heart pounding harder than it did during million-dollar board meetings. Ife looked surprised, then she laughed musically. "A whole driver buying me lunch? Okay, let's go." They sat on a low wooden bench near the roadside. As they ate the warm, smoky food, David realized he had never enjoyed a meal more in his entire life. As the weeks passed, David and Ife became inseparable. They spent evenings sitting on the concrete steps of her apartment building, talking for hours. David learned that Ife was a primary school teacher who used her small salary to support her younger brother. She was intelligent, funny, and deeply ambitious, but life had been cruel to her. "Money is good," Ife said one evening, looking up at the smoggy Lagos sky. "But character is everything. My ex-boyfriend left me because I couldn't afford to buy him an expensive watch. He thought I was too poor for his grand future." David felt a pang of guilt. He was hiding a massive secret. One Saturday, Chidi decided to test David's new life. He spotted David and Ife walking near a local market and pulled up next to them in his sleek, black Range Rover. Chidi rolled down the window, wearing dark sunglasses. "Hey, you! Move away from the road with your trash bags!" Chidi shouted, pretending to be an arrogant rich man. David held Ife's hand tightly, feeling the tension. Ife didn't shrink back. She stood firmly in front of David and looked Chidi straight in the eye. "Big man, the road belongs to everyone. Your money cannot buy manners," she said fiercely. Chidi rolled up his window and drove off, secretly grinning. David knew right then that Ife was different. The harsh reality of poverty struck David hard the following Tuesday. His fake landlord, a mean man named Barban Gozi, locked David out of his room because of a deliberate delay in paying the electricity bill. David sat on the dusty corridor, looking helpless. When Ife came to visit and saw him there, she didn't get angry or mock him. Instead, she sat right down on the dirty floor next to him. She pulled out a small plastic container of jollof rice from her bag. "We will eat first," she said, giving him a warm look. "Tomorrow, we will talk to the landlord together. Do not worry, David. You are not alone." David knew he could no longer keep the secret. He loved Ife too much to continue the lie. He invited her to a quiet park and sat her down, taking a deep breath. "Ife, I have something to tell you. I am not a Danfo driver. My real name is David Olumide, and I own one of the biggest tech companies in Nigeria." He pulled out his phone, showing her news articles and pictures of his luxury penthouse in Ikoyi. Ife stared at the screen, her face turning completely pale. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a sudden, freezing coldness. Ife stood up so fast her chair almost flipped over. Her voice shook with immense anger. "So, my life was just a game to you," she demanded, tears filling her eyes. "You sat there pretending to be poor, watching me worry about how you would eat. You wanted to test me like a laboratory rat because you think every woman is a gold digger." David reached out to touch her arm, but she slapped his hand away. "Do not touch me, David. Your money cannot buy back the trust you just destroyed. Never look for me again." She turned and ran out of the park, leaving him shattered. David tried to call her, but her phone was switched off. He went to her apartment in Yaba, but the neighbors told him she had packed her bags and left early in the morning. She had fled the chaotic noise of Lagos to find peace. Chidi tried to comfort him at his penthouse, but David was inconsolable. "She hates me, Chidi," David groaned, burying his face in his hands. "The 3 girls who rejected me for being poor didn't break my heart, but losing the one girl who loved me for being broke is killing me." David refused to give up. He used his connections to find out where Ife had gone. He discovered she had traveled down to her maternal grandmother's house in a quiet, beautiful village in Badagry. Leaving his luxury cars and expensive suits behind, David put on a simple native outfit and made the long journey down the dusty roads. He walked through the village until he found a small, neat bungalow with a beautiful garden full of hibiscus flowers and palm trees. His heart raced as he approached the wooden porch. Ife was sitting on the porch, peeling yams with her grandmother, an elegant elderly woman with kind, wise eyes. When Ife saw David, she stood up to go inside, but her grandmother held her arm gently. David walked up to the porch and dropped straight to his knees on the dusty ground. "Ife, please listen to me," David pleaded, his voice breaking. "I'm deeply sorry. I didn't do it to play with your feelings. I did it because I was lonely and broken by a world that only loved my money. But my love for you is the truest thing I have ever known." The grandmother looked at David, then at her granddaughter's tear-filled eyes. She took a deep breath and spoke softly in a rich, comforting voice. "My child, a man who travels all the way from the high towers of Ikoyi to kneel in the dirt of Badagry is not playing a game. He is a man driven by love. Wealth can make a man arrogant, but this one has shown humility." Ife looked at David, seeing the genuine pain and sincerity in his eyes. The heavy wall of anger inside her chest finally began to crack. Ife walked down the steps of the porch and stood before David. She looked at his dusty knees, then reached down to pull him up to his feet. "You are very foolish, David," she whispered, a small tear rolling down her cheek. "You didn't need a fake bus to find me. You just needed to be yourself." David wiped her tears away, pulling her into a tight, warm embrace. The grandmother smiled from the porch, nodding her head in approval. The long, painful test was over, and true healing had finally begun for them both. While still in the village, David took Ife for a long walk near the quiet lagoon. He held her hand tightly, promising never to lie to her again. "Ife, I want to use my wealth to build something that matters to you," David said softly. "You love teaching, and you love children. Let us build a standard, modern school right here where children can learn for free." Ife gasped, her eyes shining with absolute joy. "Are you serious, David?" He smiled, kissing her forehead. "Very serious. It will be our first project together." True to his word, David brought engineers and architects to the area. Within months, the sound of hammers and tractors filled the air. A massive, beautiful school building began to rise from the ground. It had bright classrooms, a massive library, and a beautiful playground for the children. Ife supervised the construction every single day, her heart bursting with happiness. She was no longer just a struggling teacher. She was the director of a grand vision. David watched her lead with grace, knowing his money was finally serving a divine purpose. With the school completed, it was time to prepare for their grand wedding. Ife was introduced to David's world of immense wealth, but she did not let it change her humble soul. David bought her a beautiful mansion, and they shopped for the finest fabrics in the country. Chidi organized a massive bachelor party, raising a glass to his friend. "You went looking for a wife in a danfo, and now you are marrying her like a king," Chidi laughed. David smiled, knowing he was the luckiest man alive. The traditional wedding day arrived, and it was the talk of Lagos. The venue was decorated in magnificent gold and royal blue colors. David looked incredibly handsome in his heavy, hand-woven aso-oke attire, surrounded by the wealthiest businessmen in Nigeria. When Ife stepped out, she looked like a literal queen. Her lace gown was adorned with real pearls, and she walked with unmatched elegance. The crowd cheered loudly as David took her hand. They danced happily to the rich rhythm of the talking drums, surrounded by pure luxury and love. The white wedding followed at a breathtaking beach resort. As the sun set over the ocean, casting a brilliant golden glow across the water, David and Ife exchanged their vows. She had moved from the noisy, crowded streets of Yaba to a life of boundless luxury, standing beside her husband. David looked out at their smiling friends and family. He knew he had won the ultimate prize. He had risked everything, endured bitter rejections, but he had found a love that would last forever.